Chapter 21. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The mansion was noisy early in the morning. Employees were also busy earlier than usual. Looking out the window, there were dozens of wagons parked by customers on a straight road leading from the front door to the main building. I was staring at the scenery outside the window, and someone called me. Florentia. It was Claravan, dressed in a cool navy blue tunic today. Lorraine just said that the most valuable property for a merchant is trust. Yap. I forgot for a moment. I was taking classes now. To take classes without exceptions on a day like today was truly a Claravan style. What do you think? As I looked at myself farther, Claravan asked again. What do you think? I think it's correct. A trustworthy customer for a trader is life-saving. And it was certainly an important asset because it wasn't readily available. Then, does Florentia agree with Lorraine's opinion? The most valuable property for a trader is a trusted business partner. That's not it. The answer I've been thinking of is similar, but a little different. This is Florentia's turn, so can you tell me the answer to your homework? I got surprised and scratched my cheek. There is no fixed answer to this problem. Each person has different values. I think the most valuable property for a merchant is people. It may be stereotypical, but I think this is the correct answer. After all, everything is done by people. Any important decision or difficult choice is made by people. As I watched my father work this time, I felt refreshed. As before, the Koroi textile business had been badly damaged and caused quite a blow to Lombardy. Of course, for Lombardy, the loss was at a level that could be quickly recovered, but there was a bigger loss. It was the credit of those who believed in the name of Top Lombardy and bought the Koroi fabric for the first time. My grandfather compensated for all the damage he suffered from unsold fabrics, in Lombardy's name, and that caused more damage to the family. But this time I intervened. However, I am not an expert in textiles, so I only changed one thing. Changing the person in charge of leading the business from V's to my father. There was only one change that caused a tremendous change. And the more a merchant earns more and more money, the more he can't do all the work alone. So, wouldn't the person whom I can trust and entrust to me become more precious? In fact, it wasn't just commerce. The same was true for the emperor and Lombardy. The emperor made an academy until he got the money he didn't have and made the people of the imperial family marry the influential nobles. It is to make their side thoroughly. The same was the reason why my grandfather was so keen on collecting talent. In addition, my grandfather runs a scholarship system in which talented people are created by bringing outstanding talents to Lombardy. All of these investments are ultimately meant to win people. So I thought to walk a similar path. The only difference between my grandfather and me was the probability. The probability that the talented people who have been invested will not be able to fulfill their roles, and the probability that they will not become Lombardy's people. Since the scholarship system was not a slave contract, there were quite a few people who finished their studies and worked for families other than Lombardy. Grandpa doesn't have much to say about it, but every time he does, he'll feel pretty sick. But I am different. The people I will make friends with and invest in are those who will play a tremendous role in the future. Besides, I know exactly what they want and what they need, so when the time comes they will be my people. Neither Lombardy nor the second prince, but mine. The faces of the people to be recruited floated before my eyes. It was only a pity that the radius of action was still limited, so I could not reach all of them. I sighed inside and asked, looking at the first person I would make my own. What do you think, Mr. Claravan? The commercial genius who started empty-handed in just a few years and created one of the best companies in the empire, Claravan Pellets. I will persuade and recruit him. I showed the smile of a cute and smart child, a kind of recruitment appeal. That's a good idea. He. Thank you. He wants to teach someone smart, cute, polite and can learn quickly. Just as expected. The right corner of Claravan's mouth lifted, covered his mouth with his fist, and coughed, loosening up. As if to focus on class again, Claravan turned to the blackboard and suddenly shaken his hand and said. Then, will it be like this today? I will finish it early than usual, wow. That's it. It's freedom. Gil-Lou and Mayron jumped up from their seats and running to me. I don't like it much. But, for some reason, Claravan also organized his books without saying anything. Then, we'll see you in the banquet in a moment. As soon as Claravan had finished speaking, the twins grabbed my arms one by one on each side and dragged them. Tia, let's go. Let's go. I'm hungry. Let's go quickly before everything delicious gone. Nothing to eat at an event hosted by the Lombardy family. But the hungry 10-year-olds were like snotting bison. I told them to calm down. The food doesn't come out until I go, the main character. Ah, is that so? Then we have to go faster. Yes. Go and eat delicious food, we have to eat it all. Ugh. I was eventually led by the two and started running halfway. As I start to breathe little by little, my heart beats and I feel better. As a child, I laughed without knowing as I ran through the hallway of the Lombardy mansion, who felt even bigger. Mayron and Gil-Lou said aloud to me. Happy birthday, Tia. Yes. Today is my 8th birthday. The Eleanor Hall, used for banquets in the mansion, was crowded with people. The band was already playing cheerful songs, and the smell of delicious food being cooked hard in the kitchen stimulated the sense of smell. From carpets on the floor, long curtains on windows, to centerpieces on each table. None of them are of the highest quality. Among those who attended my birthday party, the first people to visit the Lombardy family's banquet are distinguished. It was because I couldn't take my eyes off the colorful paintings and sculptures that filled the ceiling of the high hall. As I entered the banquet hall with the twins, I looked around for a while as if it was the first time I here, and I muttered without knowing. I'm sure Lombardy is awesome. What kind of family in this world can hold such a magnificent and splendid banquet? It's also for an 8-year-old child. On my 8th birthday, Patty from a previous life was extremely normal. During the day, I had fun with my father, and in the evening, I ate dinner with other family members. And when I got back to the room, I found some birthday presents. Of course, the gifts were more expensive than other homes, but they passed quietly that way anyway. Wow, that's exciting. There's also a clown over there. It was because it was not a regular banquet, but because it was a child's birthday party, there were many children from other noble families, and as the twins said, there were also clowns who would entertain the children. By the way, how many people have come this way? Not all of these people could have come purely to celebrate my life. Even though many people want to participate in a banquet hosted by Lombardy, it is not an important place to come by the heavy aristocrats mobilizing their young children. I was looking around the banquet hall to find out why, and someone tapped me on the shoulder. Tia, happy birthday. Lorraine. She rolled her hair beautifully, so she was prettier today. The family is up there. Go. 11-year-old Lorraine grabbed my hand and started walking towards the point I pointed out a little while ago. We go together. As I waited for the banquet to begin, the twins, who were eating the provided fruit, quickly caught up behind me. However, it didn't seem easy for 4 children to get through the gap between these crowded people. But something strange happened. Apparently, the people who seem to be in a hurry to laugh and chat among themselves, when we start to move, the sea moves like a splitting point and opens the way. After all, everyone was conscious of us. Unlike me, who was a little surprised, Lorraine and the twins seemed familiar with this situation. Because of my father, who is not good at social activities, I seldom participated in a banquet of nobles. But the other cousins didn't. Following my parents, I often attended these banquets. Just like Belsac did the last time. As I walked forward, receiving the attention of the people, I saw Lombardy's family as Lorraine said. Jeanette, V's, and Laurel's families were all gathered in one place. Everyone looks good like this. Anyway, when I looked at it from such a distance, the people of Lombardy gathered in one place were enough to be admired by other nobles. Should I say that I feel a force that cannot be explained well in words? Florentia, come here. Grandpa found me and said, laughing. Lorraine first let go of her hand, and I laughed wide and ran to my grandfather. How do you like your birthday banquet? Don't be honest with this. But since I was a good granddaughter, I chose a choice. I was surprised. I didn't know there were so many people coming to my birthday banquet, Grandpa. Haha. Grandpa said, smiling and stroking my head. This grandfather summoned some acquaintances. Come and congratulate us on the birthday of Florentia. Wow, that's it. You don't know yet because Florentia is young, but there are times when it's more about who comes to celebrate than the joy itself among adults. I don't know why, Grandpa. I looked at the people in the banquet hall with fresh eyes. Certainly, most of them are high-ranking nobles. It meant that the status of the people who came here was the social status of me and Lombardy. And also, there are as many people as your father's guests as the ones this grandfather called Nav-Om. Apart from the innocent children, it seemed that many of them are those who want to put a string on my father. My father's textile business hit a big, so it must be the aftermath. But where is Dad, Grandpa? My grandfather was slightly embarrassed by my question and answered. That's a little bit late. He stopped by the textile workshop and said he was coming right away, so he'll come right away. Yes, got it. It is 100 times better for my father's business to flourish than for such a birthday party. Grandpa laughed at me and lifted the cup in front of me. The buzzing banquet hall was curiously quiet. Now, then, the birthday's main character has arrived, so let's start the banquet. It was when my grandfather focused his attention and tried to announce the start of the banquet. The door of the banquet hall that I had entered and closed, opened and someone came in. At first, I wondered if my father had come, but it wasn't my father to walk on the carpet with everyone's attention. What? I muttered in embarrassment. As if he was very accustomed to having hundreds of eyes on him, he slowly walked up to me and said hello first. Hello, Florentia. Grandpa said that it was more important who came to celebrate than the joy itself. I looked up at my grandfather and wanted to ask. Hey, Grandpa. Then what will happen if the first prince who hasn't been called comes as a guest? Chapter 22. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I'm here to celebrate your birthday by myself. 1. Why all of a sudden? I'm pretending to be close. But I couldn't say that, so I looked up at my grandfather. Did my grandfather call him? But the surprise seemed to be the same with my grandfather. It's pretty amazing that the prince came to this place. The last time there was a commotion, the last time he left this mansion, Astana went back with all sorts of mischief as if he would never step in again. But you come to my birthday party with a smile like that. Considering that the first prince is only 12 years old this year, he is not an average child. 1. Maybe Astana won't melt more than I thought. I went back to the palace that day, and I got scolded by my mother a lot. Today, again, as a sign of apology, she directly gave a birthday present to Florentia and told me to come. I expected it to be what the empress had to do, but it was still surprising. If it's her own son who dies and can't live with, presses the prince's pride and apologizes. It is also open in front of so many nobles. I wouldn't have known that so many people would be attending my birthday party if the empress had a tight grip on the social circle. I see. Grandpa didn't say anything long. But I could. Last time, he looked at the prince as a very annoying and spoiled puppy, and my grandfather's eyes were alert. Happy birthday, Florentia. Astana said so. He put out the little jewelry box he was holding. It was a black box about the size of 2 of my palms combined. Oh, I don't want to receive it. Doesn't it have a bomb or something in it? I want to check it before opening it. Apart from all this and that, I don't want to receive the goods given by the prince. However, since everyone in this banquet hall is now focused, there is no option other than receiving it. As I hesitated, he nodded a little as if it was okay for my grandfather to take it. Eventually, I took a jewelry box from Astana and opened it. Of course, I flinched a little while opening it. Oh. After all, the imperial wealth. As soon as the lid was opened, explosive reactions erupted around. The birthday gift the prince gave was a necklace. It looks like an adult's finger is surrounded by tiny topaz around a ruby that looks good enough. My mother took care of it. How is it pretty? Astana said that, but the hidden meaning in it was, how does it look expensive? It was close to. Each of the nobles mumbled, saying that the empress gave me something precious. But honestly, I didn't like it. Proud of money in front of Lombardy. There wasn't a lot of inspiration. But I laughed brighter as I was annoyed. Yes. Thank you, Prince. Yes. Now, if I think I've done all I have to do, Astana looked refreshed. My lady, I'll bring a present. The servant who was waiting on the side came over and took the jewelry box carefully. I want to wash my hands. I wanted to wipe it off with water in front of the prince's eyes, but I rubbed it on the skirt of the dress I was wearing. It's been a while. Thank you all for coming a long way to congratulate my granddaughter, Florentia, on her birthday. Grandpa said, raising the glass high again to clear up the untidy hall. Then I'll start the banquet. As the grandfather's words ended, several doors connecting the banquet hall and the kitchen were opened at the same time, and each of the employees came out with a large silver plate. Mostly, foods made for people to carry and eat conveniently were piled up like mountains on each table. Fortunately, people began to have fun chatting with each other, just like before Astana came. I have to eat something too. Seeing delicious foods, I suddenly become hungry. Dilvico at the nearest table, I saw the twins have already started eating and tried to go there. I wish it wasn't for the guy who naturally follows me. Why are you following me? No. Why are you following me? To my question, the prince looked around and replied with a smile on his face. I'm not doing this because I want to be with you either. Then he notices as if confirming where my grandfather is. He would like to do this after receiving an order from the empress to come to my birthday party and release the feelings of Lombardy Lord. Are you going to stay together and return? You shut your mouth and stay still. Shut your mouth. Who? The little guy has already learned the wrong way to make fun of his mouth. I know very well what the first prince was doing while flocking with Belsac and Estaliou in his last life. Since I was young, he thinks I must have been a baby with yellow buds like this. I didn't want to be with a cockroach at all. I have to play with my cousins. Well then. Later, when he was a bit bigger and politically worthy of use, it was inevitable that he could be part of my plan to some extent. I was prepared to bear that degree. However, I am still the same age as a growing sprout, and from now on, the word dog has no idea of wanting to be with this child, who is so sorry to dogs. Hey, just stay still. A 12-year-old man is like this bully to an 8-year-old. Even though Lombardy was closed, it may have been a fortune for the second prince, not this child, to become the prince for the empire. The first prince. At that time, a familiar voice called Astana. Last time, we couldn't play together, so it was very difficult. It was Belsac and Estaliou standing behind him. Last time. Oh. I didn't really regret it. When the prince replied with anxiety, Belsac's face turned red with embarrassment. But that was all. If my personality was like that, the guy who wouldn't be able to get rid of him with the prince by now would laugh subtly. It was a typical type of strength and weakness. Just like his father, V's. Astana, who looked at Belsac like that, seemed pathetic, told me. Hey, you are better than him. I'm not happy at all. A sigh came out to me, wondering what the hell was this about on my birthday when I should have fun. Meanwhile, Belsaka's face was worth seeing. It was bearable to be ignored by the prince, but I couldn't stand being compared to me, clenching both fists and staring at me. Me. Why me? What did I say to you? Not me, but the prince. However, Belsac was exuding a terrifying hostility, as if he felt his anger as strength and weakness. Florentia. At that time, I heard a voice like a heavenly voice calling me. Come here. It was Shaunanet who called me from a distance. Then I'm leaving. Ha. Hey. His Majesty. With us. It was Astana who was trying to follow me, but Belsac caught him as if he wanted it all this time. There's a place to use dog poop as well. I got caught again, so I quickly ran to Shaunanet. Is there anything special? It was Shaunanet, worried that the Frist prince would have done anything to me. Even if the prince packs a gift and says an apology, she doesn't believe that it is true. It was a little annoying, but it's okay. But why did you call me, Aunt? Since all the gifts that people brought are organized, the protagonist should show his sincerity to unpack some of them. Ah, a gift. The feeling that I had deteriorated with the appearance of the first prince came back to life. Since it's a birthday party, there must be a present. Besides, most of the people who came to the banquet were people who said they were in the Empire, so how much was the collection? Just thinking about it made me happy. I think it would be nice to open only presents throughout the banquet. Hee hee. Shannonet's expression became mysterious at my words. Wouldn't it be difficult? It costs me how much it costs if I have a hard time opening a few presents. I shook my head. Yes, do whatever you want. Shaunanet said so and took me to a place where the gifts that people brought were organized. And I could see the meaning of Shannonet's expression. Is this all my gifts? The gifts from me and the twins, or the gifts from your Dan and uncle, have already been brought to your room. These are the ones from the people who attended the banquet. I'm sure I can't open it. If you do that, it is obvious that you will suffer from body ailments from tomorrow. This is because the stacked gifts made up a small garden. Mainly large ones at the bottom and small ones at the top were well organized. Well. Hundreds of people attended the banquet, so it was natural that there were so many gifts. When she looked at my tired face, Shaunanet said with a smile. There are all you can see, so just open a few and go. Yes. I opened the gift box with the help of Shaunanet on the spot. Certainly, they were high-ranking nobles, so there was no one worthless gift. Most of the jewelry that children could wear was included, and a few children's picture books with pretty pictures were also available, where they heard that I like books. And opening the gift was more fun than I thought. I was getting addicted to the thrilling taste of opening a random box. I didn't know how time was going and I was opening the presents one by one, so later, Lorraine, the twins, and Estalia's younger brother, Crean, came by my side to watch. Originally, random boxes are fun just to watch others open them. This time. Open this. Gil-Lu took a very large box from a corner and put it down in front of me. I know what. Actually, I didn't expect much. Originally, the smaller the gift box, the better it is. Oh, it's a doll. Teddy bear. As expected, the big box didn't really stand out. Unlike me, who doesn't like dolls very much, I saw Lorraine and Crean shining in their eyes. In addition to this teddy bear, there was one more gift I had already opened. I won't even use it anyway, should I give it to these two people? It was when I was thinking about that. Tia. Ha. Dad. I threw out the gift I had opened and stretched out my arms towards my father running towards me. I'm sorry that Dad is late for my daughter's birthday. I've been waiting a lot. My father lifted me and hugged me crying. It's okay. I was having fun with other people. Yes, yes. We're all opening presents together. My father asked while looking at empty boxes piled up in a large space. I opened a lot, but I still have as much as I have. Mehran said, snoring in excitement. There are a lot of gifts. Father panicked and looked at the mountain of gifts. Yes. I love it. A lot of people have come. Is that so? Tia's side is a little different from her dad again. My father was a disgusting personality for being noisy and noisy. That's what resembles me. My grandfather came back after looking around the banquet hall and the guests. Behind the grandfather was also the appearance of V's and Laurel's. As if the sediment had not been resolved, V's looked at my father. But it feels good to be together like this all in one place. The grandfather looked around the family and laughed happily. The Lombardy, brothers and sisters, and their families were grandfather's achievements. Although not perfect, my grandfather's smile as he looked at what he had accomplished was overflowing with pride. One an uninvited visitor was intervening in the warm, long-awaited scene. What is it, the first prince? The grandfather also asked as if Astana's intrusion was unpleasant as if tossing. I have something to tell. Would you like to tell? Grandfather raised one eyebrow and looked at first prince. If it's a gift from Florentia, haven't you given it a while ago? Oh, this is not something to give to Florentia. My grandfather and other family members gathered here also tilted their heads. Astana pulled something out of the inner pocket money of the jacket she was wearing. It was a dark purple envelope sealed with gold wax stamped with an imperial design. That's. First of all, V's recognized the identity of the envelope and muttered. My eyes also turned round. It was a mail that I had opened several times while working as my grandfather's secretary last life. The Empress asked me to give you an invitation to the evening dinner at the Imperial Palace. The first prince said so and began to walk. And of course, I thought it would go to my grandfather, but this time my prediction was wrong. Astana walked out with an envelope and stood in front of my father, who was holding me. Please attend and brighten your seat, Galahad Lombardy. Father took the envelope with his trembling hand. Until now, it was always the evening dinner of the Empress, who had the name, Lolac Lombardy, written on it, and the eldest son, V's, attended instead of my grandfather. But this time it was different. On the luxurious purple envelope, the name, Galahad Lombardy, was written in colorful handwriting. And I had to bury my face on my father's shoulder to avoid cheering. My heart was overwhelmed. Now it's time to go to see him at the Imperial Palace. Chapter 23. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Now, bend your knees like this. In an upright posture, my legs fluttered as I bent my knees as Jeanninette said. A little more. However, Jeanninette said sternly without any hesitation. Okay. Well done. That's how it is. Hua. It's so hard. In fact, I was really surprised. It would be so difficult to say hello with the body of a child according to imperial courtesy. Even though I ate a lot these days, my young body was much smaller and weaker than my peers. So, maybe it's because the body lacks muscle, or even though it's a simple movement, the body keeps staggering. It will be harder now by slowing down. Will you do what I show you, Tia? She got up from the seat where Jeanninette was sitting and stood in front of me. And the right arm is bent and the hand is brought to the heart, and the left hand grabs the skirt and lifts it slightly. And at the same time raising her head, she bends her knees while sending her right leg back. This is the greeting method used in imperial courtesy and is used by nobles when meeting the imperial family. That was the etiquette in the early days of the founding of the country, but these days, etiquette itself is so flexible that not all royal families are greeted in this way. The emperor and the empress, and the crown prince and the crown princess are eligible to receive such formal greetings. It's so elegant, it's cool. I clapped as I watched Jeanninette stand upright after saying hello. Jean-Annette, who said hello according to the imperial courtesy without adding any exaggeration, was like a graceful swan. Looking down, the curve starting from the slightly bowed long neck extends to the fingertips that grabbed the skirt of the dress and lifted it slightly, as if a swan spreading its wings. How do you do that? I sincerely wanted to know. The secret of Jean-Annette's crazy elegance. Jean-Annette laughed and said, tapping my nose, with her index finger. Practice. What is different from saying that I went to Seoul National University after studying mainly in textbooks? I pouted my lips. I'm not a peasant. There is really no way except practice. Especially, if you don't have the strength yet because your body is dry like a branch, you have no choice but to put it on your body. Yes. Jean-Annette was right. Originally, I care about whether I resemble my father's thin line, so I eat well and sleep well, but there is no big change in my body. Are you still far? I want to play with Tia, Mom. The twins cried as they rolled around on the sofa. While I was learning the imperial courtesy from Jean-Annette, they kept the promise to wait quietly by my side. Now how much do you know how to say hello, Tia? Yes. I will practice hard. Please see you again tomorrow. Anyway, in order not to be laughing stock in front of the Emperor and the Empress, I had to fully understand how to say hello. In particular, I can't see the first prince laughing at me even when he dies. Jean-Annette gently stroked my head, clenching my fists. I just wanted to have a daughter like you. As if it weren't just saying, Jean-Annette's words were regretful. How can I accidentally become the mother of these naughty twins? Jean-Annette frowned and laughed, pinching the chubby cheeks of Mayeon and Gil-Lu. Is it not too late? Jean-Annette, who seemed to really want a daughter, spit out without knowing. What? Oh, the words just come out of the mouth of an 8-year-old who didn't know anything yet because she hadn't received sex education. How to mess with it? First I laughed. Eehee. Then she turned the arrow to the twins. I wish they had a younger sister too, right? If you ask like this, you will be greeted immediately. I knew how to answer. The two were always bored and thought they would think that if they had a younger brother, they would be able to play together. However, the reaction between Gil-Lu and Mayeon is baffling. Not really. I don't like it either. Why? At my question, Gil-Lu replied with one big eye rolled. We love playing with Tia. Yeah. I like playing with only 3 people like this. I don't like having other kids. These guys are making a real big deal. I have a lot of people to play with, not 2 people. Will there be a lot more in the future? Lie. Tia always reads books alone if we don't play. Gee, although it is now. I mean, there is a secretly sharp corner. I avoided the twins' gaze. Then the 2 grinned, grabbed my arms one by one, and started forming a group. Let's play. Let's play. Let's play hide and seek again. Eventually the trapped beagles escaped. Okay, then first. Let's talk about this, talk. The fingers of the 2 people holding me were struggling one by one, and the door of Jean-Annette's residence opened and someone came in. Father. The twins, which were much taller and taller than me, hung from my arms, quickly fell apart. Then, when his father just stepped inside, they ran to a handsome man. Why did you come in so early today? Now can you keep playing with us until you sleep? A man in his mid-30s with a tall and sturdy physique brushed off his dark blonde hair, is Vestian Schulst, the father of twins and Jean-Annette's husband. He entered the Sun.in.law of Lombardy but did not change his surname to Lombardy and maintained his pre-marriage surname. Geez, these guys. Vestian laughed, lifting the twins one by one in each arm. Came. Jean-Annette got up and said hello to Vestian. I didn't have much work today, so I came in early. How are you with the kids, Jean-Annette? Vestian smiled gently and kissed Shannonette's cheek. At that greeting full of affection, I looked up at the couple who seemed happy. Is this an ideal couple? A tenderness overflowed in my eyes, coming and going. Oh. Florentia is here. How are you? Such an ideal and normal greeting in my family. It seems that the surroundings light up when Vestian, who has a good looking face, smiles kindly. Hello. I put my hands together and said goodbye. I'm sorry I couldn't go to your birthday party last time. I was busy that day. Although not from Lombardy, Vestian is competent in many ways and runs several small businesses in the family. The hottest thing these days is the business of bringing minerals from the mines owned by Lombardy in the north to the central region and selling them. But since all the mines he discovered a few years ago were all dry, I thought he would be unemployed until he found a new mine next year, right? Vestian's business isn't the only one, so I didn't think deeply. Shannonette, shall we have a pretty daughter like Florentia? Of course, boys are also cute. Vestian looked at me sadly and said. That I'm listening to children, but don't say that. The blushed Shannonette said, pushing the chest of Vestian holding her waist. Oh my, you two look good. I woke up deliberately, grabbed some of the cookies in front of me, and handed them out to the twins. Shall we go out and play? Fortunately, the twins nodded immediately and asked to do so, and we went outside. Whenever I played hide and seek, I was always the trick, so I was seeing Gillu and Mayron running away while bursting out of laughter. Why does such a close couple divorce 3 years later? 1 In addition, the twins are taken by his father, and Shannonette lived alone on the outskirts of the empire until Lombardy's fall. After that, it was only at grandfather's funeral that Shannonette returned to his Lombardy residence. I tilted my head as I remembered the couple looking at each other holding hands. As always, I had the windows slightly open and leaned against the windowsill, and enjoyed the time. The wind filled with the warm noon sunlight tickled my face. A few hours later, when my father returns from the morning work, we immediately leave for the imperial palace. From here, it took about an hour by carriage to the border with the emperor's direct command, and about half an hour to enter the palace again. And my father said that he would take a little more time and start, saying that he would show me the inside of the palace for the first time in the imperial palace. And at sunset, the empress's dinner begins. But no matter how busy tonight was going to be back, the hours of the day were slowly flowing. As I was about to fall asleep, I heard a knock on the door. Come in. As I answered, the door carefully opened and Estra entered. Hello, Estra. It was a nice guest waiting. I quickly pulled a nearby chair and made Estra sit down. I brought what you asked for. The medicine was already completed a few days ago, but I told you to bring it today. Yes. That's right. Thank you. Here you are. What Estra brought out was a small glass bottle the size of a circle in my hand. The glass bottle was in a pocket made of a thick cloth so that the inside could not be seen, but when I carefully unwrapped the string and opened it, I could see that it was filled with golden Melkin medicine. Of course, it's Estra. As I asked, they all prepared perfectly. Thank you. I carefully put it in the little pocket I had aside. It was to be taken when entering the imperial palace. My lady. Yes, why? Estra, who was still watching what I was doing, called me with anxiety. Are you trying to use Melkin medicine as an antidote? I did not answer. I just looked into Estra's eyes. It was really clear, Snow. I can see that the reason you are asking me this question is pure because you are worried about me. It's not for me, don't worry too much. I deliberately smiled brighter. If so. I'm sorry, but I can't tell you that far. But it's right to bring it to the imperial palace as Estra expected. When the word imperial palace came out, Estra's complexion became even darker. It would be an infinitely difficult and scary space for ordinary people. Because there is someone there. Anyone who needs this medicine. I will pass it on to that person. Be careful, lady. I'm worried that a young lady is trying to do something too big. Thank you for worrying, Estra. Oh, and, I leaned over to Estra and whispered. Do you know this is a secret for the two of us? In my whisper with a little playfulness, Estra nodded with a face with a firm determination. In fact, I have spoken to the old woman, but I don't doubt that Estra will tell anyone about me. Estra was a woman who kept his promises. In my previous life, I knew the blinding trust she had shown to her master. Ah, I hope my dad will come soon. I muttered as I looked at the empty road because no carriage was going around. Asterisk asterisk asterisk, don't be too nervous, Tia. Gallahan spoke to Tia the 10th time in the swaying carriage. I'm okay. Yes, that's fortunate. The daughter answered energetically, but Gallahan only laughed dimly. Dad, are you okay? Your face is white. It's okay. Dad is just a little nervous. Oh. Tia patted Gallahan's cold hand with her small hand. With that little touch, Gallahan felt a little relaxed. But what is that bag, Tia? It looks pretty heavy, but your dad will listen. Gallahan deliberately turned his attention not to think of the Empress's dinner. It's not heavy, it's okay. You don't usually carry your bag well, so what's in it? The brown round handbag that goes well with Tia's light green dress was even cuter because it was held in the child's small hand. A gift. Gift. Yes. I will give it to the prince. Florentia replied in a bright voice. You give it to the first prince. The daughter didn't answer the questions but laughed. And on that clear face, Gallahan felt like a big rock thumping over his chest. That's right, Tia is also that old, now. I knew that someday like this would come, but... No, not like that. It was just the moment Florentia was about to say something. The carriage that was going well suddenly stopped. What is it? Gallahan asked the coachman. Well, it's the Imperial Palace guard that will check the gate, so stop the wagon. No way. I pulled the curtain of the carriage and looked outside. The carriage moves to the Lombardy mansion with the interior of the Imperial Palace will not be stopped. The carriages with the Lombardy pattern were originally the same wherever they went. When Gallahan was frowning on his eyebrows and grasping the situation, the carriage door burst open. I'll check for a moment. Please get off. 2 Imperial knights were wearing flashing armor. Lombardy's carriage. Gallahan Lombardy comes at the invitation of the Empress. However, the knight opened the carriage door wider without listening to all of Gallahan's explanations. I'm sorry. I'll ask for your cooperation. Something was weird. However, if there is a conflict here, the daughter may be greatly surprised. Gallahan looked around at Florentia, who was sitting quietly with her eyes open widely and tried to get off the wagon by herself. Young lady also comes down. Do you mean even the child will search for it? Now Gallahan's voice raised, as if completely angry. Sorry. Gallahan did not hide his displeasure. There was only one reason to suddenly go out to search like this in the Imperial Palace, where even the office of the Emperor directly passed the Lombardy pattern. Overpower. The Empress or Emperor who gave the order is trying to break the flag. Is this the Empress's order? Gallahan asked straightforwardly. The knight could not answer anything and avoided his gaze. He can't help it. Gallahan said after sighing. Leave the child. In a low warning voice, the knight exchanged glances with his colleague for a moment and nodded. Gallahan got off the wagon. Looking around, the place where the carriage was built seemed to be deep inside the Imperial Palace, where the Empress's palace was located. It was a normal, empty street that was not properly equipped with guards or knights. From the starting point that had already passed through the central palace with many eyes to see, he stopped the carriage that had been running fine, saying that he would come and search. How many knights of the family should I have brought? Galahad had a belated regret. Then, for a moment, the driver approached and tried to check Galahad's arms. Galahad said, trying not to distort his face in shame that he had never been born with. It would be better not to touch my body. The knight who was approaching at the moment flinched. If you have a miscellaneous check on me, you will lose your title. The knight, who was pushed back by Galahad's momentum, noticed for a moment, coughed, and nodded. There seems to be nothing, so I'll finish the check. Let's get on the wagon again. It was an overwhelming and absurd situation. Galahad finally looked at the knights with his eyes and got on the carriage. No, he was going to do that. However, when he saw the door on the other side of the wagon that was open, the inside of the wagon, it empty as it was. Florentia. Plus his daughter was gone. Chapter 24. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You don't usually carry a bag, so what's in it? A gift. Gift. Yes. A gift to the prince. The second prince is also a true prince, so it is not wrong. The milk and medicine I prepared was for Prince Perez, the second prince. The empress began poisoning the food around the time Perez's mother fell ill and died. But I don't know exactly what poison was used. In my previous life, seeing him become prince and Lombardy under attack, I looked for the intelligence guild, wondering if there would be any help. I paid with the money I had accumulated over the entire months and bought an envelope with information, but it did not say exactly what poison the empress used. It was that Perez himself couldn't figure it out until the end and only healed the after-effect of terrible insomnia left by poison. However, it was evident that for quite some time, they continued to use small amounts that were not easily noticed. The emperor did not pay much attention to the child, who had been mistaken for one night with a maid, and left it to the empress. Of course, the empress promised to take good care of himself on his own and then moved closer to avoid the emperor's eyes. But for some reason, Perez survived without being poisoned, and 3 years later, the emperor noticed the empress's lies. Sadly, there was no significant difference in Perez's life. The emperor only used the empress's fault to contain Anginas, who had grown in size but still had no affection for the second prince. It was also because around that time the emperor began to see new heirs from several aristocratic families with concubines. I was so inclined to think about Perez, but I heard my father's weak voice. Yeah, Tia is too old, now. But my father's reaction is a little strange. I thought this would come someday, but... No, not like that. Something seems very hurt. But I can't tell the truth. I'm going to get lost after a while looking around the interior of the imperial palace with my father. Of course, the destination is where the second Prince Perez is. Luckily, I knew the approximate location of the palace where the second prince lived with his mother. The empress wanted to put the hat where her eyes could reach. So she threw a small stellar palace in the woods west of the palace, and Perez said he lived there before going to the academy. What will he look like now, 11 years old, the same age as twins? What is it? That, it. The imperial palace guard will check the gate, so stop the wagon. A checkpoint in the Lombardy family's wagon. Without panic, the door of the carriage was opened from the outside, and 2 imperial knights were standing. Is this the empress's order? It was the cold voice of my father I heard for the first time. The knights did not give any answer. At the end of a small rung, my father looked at me as if not to worry, and got out of the car. In fact, I wasn't worried about this situation, but I was surprised to see my father for the first time. It was obvious what happened. Something that will never happen to Grandpa's carriage is just happening to us. It was very cowardly and dull for the shame of a person who became an empress. It was when I sighed and looked out of the window on the other side from where my father had left. The second prince. I could see something like the back of a boy with dark hair passing through the trees in the distance. The real second prince. Heaven must have helped this. What I knew was a really rough location, so when I was thinking about how to find the palace where the second prince is located and whether I could meet him if I went to it, I accidentally found him like this. This is an opportunity you can never miss. After confirming that my father was still fighting with the knights, I very carefully opened the door on the other side of the carriage. Fortunately, the door opened smoothly without making any noise. With my bag in one hand, I ran into the grass right in front of me. Looking back, my father and the knight still didn't know what was going on. I felt a little guilty when he realized that I wasn't there and thought that my father would be surprised, but I can't help it. If this is not the case, there is no way to meet the second princes without the Empress's knowledge. I have to give Perez this medicine and come back as soon as possible. I, who hid my body behind the low grass, ran hard to the side where second prince disappeared until I was out of sight of my father and the knights. Oh, ha! Oh my! It seemed that I was far away from my father and the knights as I moved without hesitation, but there was a problem. Where are you? Apparently, the second prince who ran this way, I couldn't even see his nose, and I lost my sense of direction because I was in the woods. I try to pretend to be lost and I really lost. I have to give up finding Perez and go back to where my father is. At that time, I heard the sound of burst. As I turned my head, I could see the bushes not far from where I was standing. Gulp. I approached carefully, swallowing heavily. Bruises, bruises. I could hear the sound of my footsteps approaching, but there was no response from the grassy side. I further killed footsteps. And finally, a small seal began to appear. The first thing I noticed was the black hair that had grown to cover the neck slightly. It didn't have a name tag on it, but I was sure. It was the second prince, Perez. I was right. But I couldn't call or speak his name. After a few puffing attempts, I was only able to speak out. What are you doing now? The second prince, squatting in front of the bush, was plucking one type of sharp leaf with a familiar hand movement. And it didn't stop there. The leaves were ripped off roughly, and second prince took it right into his mouth. It was clear that his small mouth was already full of something like grass. It goes on. Even if the green liquid poured into the corner of his mouth, he accidentally wiped it through his sleeve and never stopped eating the leaves in front of him. It was so mechanical and desperate that my conscience was awakened. I barely moved my frozen body and walked a couple of steps closer. Stop. When I spoke urgently, the busy movement of the prince stopped at that moment. The boy, whose face I only saw from the side the whole time, turned his head and looked at me. Vivid red eyes with dark brown color. This boy was definitely the second prince. What the hell are you doing? Why do you eat that grass? I was getting angry without even realizing it myself. Young Perez looked at me with eyes that seemed to have no feelings. And replied. Because my stomach hurts. What? Since a while ago, my stomach keeps hurting for no reason. The book said that eating this herb makes it okay. Ah. I couldn't connect. My head was blank as if I was hit in the back of my head. The reason why his stomach hurts was obvious. It was a symptom of poisoning, showing the poison slowly accumulated in the body. The pale complexion only caught my eyes. The second prince survived this way. Like a wild beast, he wandered around in the woods, found helpful herbs, and ate them. Second prince looked at me for a while, then sat back. Since he is 3 years older than me, he is 11 this year. It was the same age as the twins. But Perez was too small to say that he was 11 years old. At best, he only looked less than 10 years old. The color was too poor to be called a prince. The clothes he was wearing seemed to be made of high-quality materials, but they were wrinkled and dirty all over the place. Maybe he was wearing one clothes for a few days. No way, is there no attendant to take care of? An ominous premonition ran over my head. At that time, Perez tried to pluck the leaves again and eat them, and I took the hand in fright. Don't eat anything like this. If you're sick, you should take medicine. But, even when my mother was sick, the doctor did not come. Well, that's. So I found it in the book. It looks like a useless weed, but it might work. Sitting squatted next to me, the height of the eyes was similar to me, and the prince's wrist in my hand was too thin. Unbeknownst to me, I was amazed and quickly relieved my hand. When his mother was dying of sickness, the empress prevented the doctor from entering there. So, when Perez became the crown prince and exercised full power of the fallen emperor, he first sent the first prince to the battlefield. It was the northern front, famous for having the most casualties and fiercely. And, let alone of the empress, and a doctor or medicine was not allowed to enter the palace of the empress, who fell in shock. When I heard the story, I thought for a moment that it was a little too much. He's a very cruel person, I thought so. Point one. But now, I don't think I can say that even for a moment. A child who wasn't as big as his age chewed on grass like this and endured it. He survived fiercely alone. I brushed off the remaining grass from Perez's hand and said as I opened the bag I had. I have medicine, so don't eat anything like this. The prince tilted his head and asked. Who are you? He also asks very quickly. I replied with a small sigh. My name is Florentia. Florentia Lombardy. I am Perez. The second prince said, looking at the leaves that fell on the floor with easy eyes. And he looks up and looks at me. The eyes, which were like the color of dark blood, were empty. The second prince asked me. But, why are you crying? What are you talking about? You are crying. What nonsense. I was amazed when I grinned and put my hand around my eyes. Tears were really falling from my eyes. Oh, this is it. Why am I crying? When I was confused and stumbled without giving a proper explanation, the prince said. Am I pitiful? Oh, damn it. To make such a word come out of a child's mouth. I was embarrassed, so I made a louder voice. No. It's not like that. It's okay. My mom and nanny did that too. I'm sorry, I'm pitiful. In front of this boy, I keep losing my words. But Perez shrugged as if he didn't know the meaning of the word poor. Neither of them is next to me right now. No nanny, no nanny. The prince's mother died a while ago, but I thought somebody would remain next to him. Perez shook her head from side to side. She got kicked a while ago. The nanny said she didn't want to go, but the soldiers took it away. The cruel empress. Point one. No one is left with a child who is only 11 years old. Well, there's no way a person who tried to kill him by slowly drying it with poison could see such a situation. Thinking of the empress, I was working hard on my teeth. At that time, the second prince said to me. So I also like that you don't help me. You might even die because of me. Chapter 25. You are listening at novelfull.audio. No, I will not be killed. I said firmly without any hesitation. Aren't you going? But. Perez's gaze instinctively points at the side of the empress's palace. No matter how small he is, he probably knows it. It is the empress who is killing his mother, taking away everything he ought to have, and slowly killing him. Perez looked at me with amazement for a moment, then shook his head again. No. The people who helped me are all dead, injured, or gone. So you go too. You shouldn't be here. This time I was really upset. Shouldn't you have to hold on to anyone and ask for help, save me? I opened my handbag a little rough with a feeling of confusion. And I took out the vial I brought from it. I felt the red eyes staring at it closely. Don't worry. They can't touch me. Why? Because. I felt angry and rough words would pour out, but I was still in front of a child, so I tried my best to purify it. Because my grandfather is 100 times older than the person who is bullying you. Grandfather. Ha, I envy you. Perez said, flicking his little finger. I wondered if I could tell the story of my grandfather to a child who became alone, but I said, tapping the shoulders of second prince more casually. And you, I'll help. So don't worry about me, drink this one. As soon as I was in a hurry, I poured as much medicine as Estra told me on the lid of the vial. Because it is a thickened concentrate, I had to drink it in water to reduce the bitter taste, but now this is the best one. Perez glanced at the little lid that I had put out, and gently took it and drank it. Hey, Perez. Why? It was obvious that it would enough to make my whole body tremble, but he didn't frown once. You shouldn't eat anything that others give you. Are you fine? Have you received it without a doubt? I was very worried about the attitude of the second prince, who wasn't even wary. I know Perez's past, present, and future, so even if I met him for the first time today, I feel like I've known him for a long time. The second prince sees me for the first time today. Perez tilted his head at my bruise and replied. I'm dying already. Even if you gave me poison, it doesn't change much. Oh, this guy really knows. I wondered if the Empress didn't know that he knows she was poisoning the food he was eating. I just wanted you to not know. And you said you helped me. In my hand, tightly grasped by Perez's words, a bunch of soft cloths in my handbag twisted. Because there haven't been many people who have offered to help me so far. But it doesn't matter if it's not like that. Town. Also, I pushed a piece of candy into the mouth of the guy who was trying to talk dark words. It was brought in a bag along with the bitter medicine. I'm not saying that, little kid. Eat candy. I'd rather like my cousins Belsac or Estaliu, and do the nasty shit. It was hard work for me to see myself as if I was crouching in the dark by myself. Pere Perez asked me, who was grunting like that. You are a child too. First of all, although a child is right. I'm 11 years old. How old are you? I am 8 years old. You're a kid. You eat candy. But I said, reaching out to the second prince with my handbag. Although you are older, it's okay because I have more than you. The cheek of the guy who bit the candy was convex. I don't have much time today, so I'll tell you shortly. From now on, take this medicine twice a day every day. You can take as much as I gave you, a little bit at a time. Perez quietly accepted the vial and the handbag I was handed to him. It will detoxify the poison and make your body healthy again. Is this medicine? The second prince looked into the golden sparkling liquid and asked me. Can I live? As if I wasn't sure if it was okay, I wasn't sure if my voice. Mom told me to live. She told me to survive. It's very difficult. Perez seemed to be exhausted. Even the body that was too skinny for a child was shivering by the wind. I felt like I should have comforted him, but I said in a subtle tone deliberately. I have something to worry about. Of course, you have to overcome everything and survive. Your mother said that, and then you can do that. Really? Yes, really. The second prince remained silent for a moment. Then suddenly asked me. What about you? Would you like me to live? Do you think I can live? Yeah. I wish you could live. No, I think you have to live. Because you are the person who will be more flashy than anyone else. Although now it is as shabby as a caterpillar that has to hide in the damp ground. When the time comes, you will fly higher than anyone else and become the prince of this empire, and you will finally be able to get your rightful revenge. I have to go now. There are a few things you have to keep until the next meeting. I got up and said, brushing off the dirt from my ass. Once, no matter how much medicine you take, it's better not to eat poison foods, but if you do so, you may be noticed. So, eat it first. I was so offended. telling a child to eat the food even though he knows it contains poison. But you have to make the Empress believe that her plans are working. That way, she won't do anything else, so she can't stop me from trying to get rid of Perez. And do you have a maid who brings you rice? The second prince nodded. When that person comes, you always have to lie down and pretend to be sick. You don't need to act on purpose. Just show you lying down and sleeping without power. Okay. And do you have a wooden sword? To my question, Perez brought a wooden sword that had been placed far away and showed it to me. My nanny gave it to me on my last birthday. Whether it's pretty precious, longing spreads through his red eyes. Yeah. There is no proper teacher, but you have to practice every day with a wooden sword. The second prince went to the academy and did a tremendous job of graduating from the senior level with only the swordsmanship he learned lately. So, if you continue to practice from now on. Who? Like this. At my words, Perez grabbed a wooden sword and swung it several times. However, the sound is not terrifying. I don't have the knack for swordsmanship, but does it sound like that from a normal 11-year-old who draws randomly? That also from a sick child. It's also a wooden sword. Unlike me, who was embarrassed, Perez swung her sword a few more times with an expressionless face. One Wow. Wyrilik. It doesn't take much effort and seems to be playing with a sword. Whenever the blunt wooden sword cut through the air, a heavy pulsing sound rang. I know that I am a stranger to the sword. Something more powerful than human power is moving with the sword he's wielding casually. This is not a scam. An 11-year-old who has never taken a proper swordsmanship class and has been poisoned has this ability. I knew that from the moment the second prince entered the Imperial Academy beyond the reach of the Empress, he grew up like a fish in water. Since he was young, he didn't know that he had monster-like abilities in this way. I thought he was a good boy, but he was a guy. Where did you ever learn swordsmanship before? I asked for confirmation because I didn't know. No. Then, did you have any other wooden swords before you got this? No. Really? That's a scam. I wonder if I keep asking questions. Perez tilted his head. Am I wrong? Aren't you doing this? As there was no object of comparison, it seemed that he was not even aware of what his abilities were. I thought for a moment and then replied. No. It's not bad. I think you can do well if you keep practicing. I wondered if I would tell the truth. You seem to have a tremendous talent. But then, Perez may have a different choice from his last life. I mean, that one word of mine could stimulate that enormous sense of vengeance that would be crouching somewhere in that guy. He responded quietly, saying he knew what I said. Tia. Where are you? At that time, I heard my father's voice calling me. Oh right. I had to go back quickly. Then I go. See you later. Ha. Perez's shoulder was drooping as if he didn't want to be left alone again. Hey, I will try to meet again as soon as possible. In the meantime, take good care of my medicine and doing well with what I said before. The dark red eyes look at me. I came to build trust in advance in the second prince, who will become the crown prince in the future, to give what he needs. I felt like I had become the guardian of a child who was snoozing. However, even after seeing the terrible look of the second prince, I couldn't just throw the medicine in moderation. I'm coming. Bye. Bye. Well, even if you leave it alone anyway, he's a guy who becomes the crown prince on his own. Wouldn't it be a big deal to help you keep your body from getting sick when you were younger? As I turned around leaving Perez alone in the woods, I really thought so. The human side is not knowing what kind of change this kind of assistance will bring, which starts with sincerity. Every word of mine is going to be engraved in his head. What did my outstretched hand mean to Perez? I really didn't expect anything. I ran out of the grass and called my father. Dad. Tia. The surprised-faced father ran to me. Where did you go? Any injuries? Fortunately, my dad didn't seem very surprised because the time I disappeared was short, but the eyes that looked at me were still full of worries. Did you find it? 2 knights who were looking for me on the other side came over here. Despite being inside the Imperial Palace, but you shouldn't disappear like that. You make me worry. I'm sorry, why did you suddenly get off the wagon? That's it. Those uncles told me to get off. I know I have to get off, at my words, the knights flinched. So I got off, but I saw a cute squirrel over there, so I followed. It was the moment when second prince became a cute squirrel, in no time, plus when my father looked at me, he sighed and laughed bluntly as if he couldn't help it. Sorry. They were just following orders when the 2 knights were smartly scratching their heads and talking. What are you saying sorry for? A gorgeous woman was smiling while looking at us with a bunch of maids as if they were taking a leisurely walk. It was Rabini Anginas Dorelli, Empress of the Lambru Empire. Chapter 26. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I've met Rabini a few times. Of course, not now, but in my previous life. At that time, she was a beautiful woman with outstanding beauty who was thoroughly managed, but the Empress, who is still 10 years younger than that, was truly a beautiful person with eyes widely open. But at the same time, there was a corner as cold as it looks. Gallahan Lombardy, right? Rabini slowly reached out one hand to my father. If the women's imperial greetings were the ones I practiced with Shaunanet last time, the men's greetings were 2 different ways. 1. Bow with hand near the heart in the same way, and 2. Bow down the hand of the royal family and place it on the forehead. Of course, the second method was a little more polite. A greeting method that is rarely used anymore in greeting the Empress didn't take the hand outright, and my father looked at it for a moment and put it on his forehead. I also followed my father to say hello, but the Empress was not looking at me. She seemed to be feeling a strange sense of victory as she looked at my father with slightly closed eyes. I saw the guest wagon I invited to dinner, so I saw it. What happened? The Empress asked, looking back at the 2 knights. Well, that. Of course, the word was confused. The Empress ordered to forcibly check our carriage, and the scene of apologizing for him was done by the Empress again. Rabini's eyes looking at them were particularly cold. Don't do this here, let's go inside. It's not polite to keep guests on the street. The Empress, who said so, turned around and started walking. 5 or 6 maids followed her. My father looked at it with a hard face for a while, then he felt my gaze and looked back. Shall we go too, Tia? There must be a lot of thoughts like this that. My father laughed as he reached out to me. The place where the Empress guided us was a dining hall built specifically for dinner at the Empress's palace. Rabini called about 10 guests every month to manage his network, but often the Emperor was also with her, so the Empress's dinner among the nobles was an important event that they wanted to attend. But as my father and I stepped inside, we realized that today's dinner was different from what we had heard of. There was only tableware set for 5 people on the long table. Today I invited only Lombardy. We have something to celebrate, right? The Empress laughed with her large eyes gently folded. It was very beautiful, but I didn't feel any beauty in it. Rather, I felt uncomfortable as only the shabby appearance of the second prince was reminded of me. It is an honor. My father still greeted politely and sat down on the chair pointed to by the Empress. And as soon as we settled down, the door of the dining hall reopened, as if waiting, and first prince entered. Mother. Welcome to Astana. Astana's friend is here today. Astana glanced at me and replied with a gentle appearance in the world. That guy and I are friends. I wanted to laugh but held it in my seat. Hello, Lombardy young lady. How are you, Your Majesty the First Prince? The first prince, who received my father's greeting, sat down on the side of the Empress by bruising it as it was. By the way, it was the seat in front of me. Oh, I feel uncomfortable. I'm going to tell you something I couldn't say a while ago, but Empress. My father, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke. The Empress stopped drinking water with a smile. Please speak. Today, on the way to the Imperial Palace, my carriage was checked by the Imperial Knights. Oh. Although the Empress looked surprised, it was actually close to a smiling face. Usually, if you let go of pretense like that, there's nothing to say. I don't know, but I have nothing to say. However, my father did not give in and continued the conversation with a firm face. In the Imperial Palace, Lombardy's blood relatives are not subject to checks or search. Wouldn't that be the law? Father's protest was justified. It is. It's weird. However, the Empress laughed at my father's words. Why are there so many exceptions only to Lombardy? All other families entering the Imperial Palace are subject to thorough checks. The Empress's speech was very twisted. But somehow, it didn't seem to be intended. Rather, the negative feelings toward Lombardy were so strong that it was close to a cynical speech flow without even knowing. The Empress soon laughed and added to see if he realized such a mistake. Of course that's because Lombardy is a special family in many ways. Father didn't answer anything. I only faced the Empress for a while without looking away. It was when the door of the dining hall was opened once again that the atmosphere that seemed to be shattered at any time was distracted. Ha! Galahad. It was Emperor Jovans who came in, calling out my father's name with a loud voice from the beginning. As the second prince, he was a man with black hair and an open-minded atmosphere. I followed my father and got up from the seat and greeted me according to imperial courtesy. It's been a long time since this. How are you? I am glad that your majesty is in good health. It's always me. My father and the emperor are actually the same age and seem to have had quite a close relationship when they were younger. The emperor's gaze, who patted my father's shoulder with his thick hand, reached me. Ho! You are Florentia. Florentia Lombardy greets His Majesty the Emperor. I am a surprisingly strong type in the real world, and fortunately, I did not make a mistake this time. The Emperor's laughter and dry eyes glanced over me. Yes, yes. You are a very pretty child. Thank you, Your Majesty. I think you have a very smart daughter who resembles you, Galahad. The Emperor seemed good at praising someone. Let's sit down. As the Emperor took over at the top, the dinner began as the attendants brought and carried food. While everyone was busy preparing meals, I felt something a little weird. Still, he is a son, but the Emperor came to the dinner table and never gave a glance to the first prince. Astana seemed to be familiar with such a father and didn't seem to care. So what were you talking about before I came? I was just saying hello without saying anything. The Empress looks around on a smiling day. Father stared at the Empress. I don't think that's it, Galahad. The Emperor took turns looking at my father and the Empress and said. If there's anything in your heart, it's okay to say it without surprise. However, the Emperor's words were not sincere, but empty words. He didn't wonder what my father wanted to say at all, and the Empress didn't think my father would say anything special in front of the Emperor. The form of sipping the fruit wine that the attendant gave me was relaxed. I was angry. In front of my grandfather, these two people were very careful with a word, seen making fun of my dad. But at the same time, the Empress was reasonable. So I thought my father wouldn't say anything. But I was telling the Empress about what happened on the way to dinner today. It was amazing. Father did not back down even before the Emperor. The Emperor and the Empress also paused for a moment as if they were smiling as if unexpectedly that my father would come out like this. What happened? The Emperor asked, scratching his beard. Our wagon was checked by the Imperial Knights. The Emperor was also quite surprised. Then, I glacé and see the Empress. Ha ha, something like that happened. I noticed roughly what had already happened. We probably weren't the only ones who overpowered in that way. I have a strong feeling that I may not have experienced the same thing as V's. The Empress was not showing her expression with her lowered eyes. There seems to be a misunderstanding of something. The Emperor, who had been steamed for a while, said. They stopped the carriage with the Lombardy emblem. It doesn't seem like a misunderstanding, Your Majesty. Galahad, you seem very angry. Obviously, he wasn't like my father. Because of his timid personality, he was very different from usual, who couldn't speak badly to an employee who wasn't the emperor. My daughter was very surprised. My father replied in a low voice. Only then could I understand my father's actions. My father is now angry at the fact that he was scared by the articles, not that he was insulted. It seemed like a cold wind was blowing over the table for a moment. Ha! I'm sorry for this. He burst into laughter, but the emperor eventually had to apologize for being sorry. However, there was no mention of the empress in any of the words that followed. Understand the knight's spirit of striking. Some cannot accept the special relationship between the imperial family and Lombardy in their loyalty. In the end, it was the knight that took the wrong. The empress, who instructed everything, is left out and regarded as an individual's fault. My father knew it too, and he nodded with a small sigh. I just hope this will never happen again. Well, then. It won't happen again. Now, get a drink. The emperor shook his chest as if he was promising, and poured alcohol to my father. I looked at the empress's face, pretending to drink the juice in front of me. And it was creepy. It was a beautiful face that was still smiling, but his sharp eyes were staring at my father without buzzing. She has been trying to kill the second prince that way, but she's a very scary person. So the full-fledged dinner began, and prepared foods began to be served one after another. Of course, it was a great dish because it was served by the empress, but I couldn't do that to Lombardy. It was when I was making such a sober evaluation. The emperor, having a mischievous conversation with my father, suddenly asked a question about his business. Yes, you said the business you led was a big success. The empress, who had not said anything after my father protested to the emperor, also showed interest this time. It was great to see Angines and Lombardy, the two main pillars of the empire, working together. It's an exaggeration. Since when did Angines become the main pillar of this empire? He was an emperor who slowly raised his wife, Angines, to the same level as Lombardy. Now, Emperor Jovans was trying to stop Lombardy's solo with Angines. It is also the reason why the emperor vaguely knows what she is doing to the second prince, but pretends not to know. However, about 3 years later, the partnership between the empress and the emperor ends as Angines fought the emperor's wrath through absurd tax evasion. 1. Please help the top Duroc a lot in the future, Galahad Lombardy. They're just starting, so they're awkward. The empress said to my father with a world-friendly smile. But the answer that came back wasn't very friendly. I've already spoken to the top Lord of Duroc, but I'm going to leave the textile business soon, Empress. Yeah. Perhaps it was the first time I heard it, the Empress's poker face was finally broken. She seemed to think that if my father, who is the center of the business, is omitted, there will be a setback in the business. It is the money line that will make the first prince become crown prince, but it will be a big deal if it dries. I'm thinking of doing another personal business. That's really fast. Isn't it overly rushing? I hope you can help the top of Duroc a little more. I'm sorry, but I don't think I can. The embarrassed empress tried to persuade him somehow, but my father didn't budge. It's not always possible for the top of Lombardy to help the top of Duroc. In a word, he was saying that you guys should do it on your own. 1. The empress's mouth, who properly grasped the meaning, trembled. And the empress's eyes changed. Until a while ago, she had been thinking about how to force this seemingly relaxed person to do what she wanted, but now that thought seemed completely closed. Gallahan, you are very different from what I thought. I don't know what kind of expectations Empress had of me, but I apologize for not being able to live up to it. Originally, my father is not the one who speaks so firmly. It seemed that the Empress was not firmly happy with it. That's the same for me. So how is the work of the second prince and the treatment of Lombardy? In many ways, he was a terrible person. After dinner, you don't know whether food goes into your mouth or nose. On the way home in the carriage, my father spoke little. As usual, the time to fall asleep has passed, so I cut my father's legs and stroked my forehead, and fell asleep. Because I have no strength. My father muttered as he looked out the window. Inside a dark room with a single candle lit. It was a small separate palace, but it was too big and empty for an 11-year-old boy left alone. Perez, sitting as if hiding in the corner of the bed, took out a pocket in his hand. And he drank the golden medicine in it with one gulp, following exactly what Florentia said. It was bitter medicine, but Perez didn't show off. It was because there is no one to look at even if he felt bitter. Perez, who closed the lid of the vial, took out a round candy from his pocket and ate it. The white ball becomes convex to follow the shape of the candy. Humumu, Perez muttered like a snort. The bitter taste is now familiar enough to get used to, but not this sweetness. It was unfamiliar and awkward. But Perez diligently rolled the candy in her mouth. It was because he felt better little by little. Does the sweet taste spreading out make your heart beat? If not. Perez touched his soft handbag. He remembered the face of Florentia he met during the day. For a while, she had a cute face that seemed to be a fairy in the forest. In particular, her big, round green eyes, which seemed to have taken the color of a blade of grass, were stuck in his head. And the boy said, "I wish you could live." "No, I think you have to live." Perez held the bottle in one hand as if he would never let it be taken away. Crap. The candy rolled in his mouth once more. Sweet. Perez muttered as he watched the shadows of the candles. Chapter 27. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The endless afternoon. I ate snacks that were spread out on the table with the twins. When I hear a snoring sound from both sides, it seemed that Gil-Lu and Mayron had fallen asleep earlier. When my face on a hard table, I looked up at the sky. It was a clear sky without a single cloud. How can I overcome the danger? How? Fortunately, I safely delivered the medicine to the second prince. In fact, when I couldn't find the palace where Perez lived, I had somehow prepared a countermeasure to give him an antidote. Cards that have not been used this time seem to be more useful next time. Wow, it's frowning. I stretched out once and yawned to break my mouth. Do you think I'm stupid when you see this? Obviously, there are plans to carry out in the future, and my body is refusing to do anything. Even my father couldn't see my face any more than before, he was so busy these days. Sometimes I could have breakfast together, but even then, I couldn't easily talk. It was because I always thinking about something. Thanks to my busy father, I am still nursed by twins today. Wow. When Gil-Lu fell asleep, the blanket that covering him fell to the floor. I thought I would take it. For a moment, it's annoying. I turned my head out the window, pretending not to see it. And already half asleep, rolling my head blankly, trying to figure out what to do next. Well, I mean. Now we have to solve Estra's problem. As far as she can afford, Estra himself can save money and go to the Imperial Academy. But it was my side that was urgent. It was my job to help myself to send her to the academy as early as I can and help her focus on her research. Let's stay still. When is the deadline for applying for the academy this year? I opened my ear with one little finger and muttered. The rainy season ended last month, and it's spring. The moment my thoughts got there, my mind flashed as if I was hit by a big hammer in my head. This month is the end. Fortunately, it is still the beginning of the month, but it was not the time to be doing this. I got up from my seat and headed to the door. Wow. Tia, where are you going? Mehran asked me while rubbing his sleepy eyes. Restroom. Okay. Come quickly. Ha.am. If I said otherwise, he would have tried to follow me. Fortunately, Mehran couldn't overcome the drowsiness and closed her eyes again. I shut the door silently as I watched him fall asleep again. Duroc owner sat on the other side and glanced at Gallahan looking at the documents. Aside from being the son of Lolac Lombardy, he was a very handsome man. Especially, it was like that in appearance. These days, women say that they like delicate and pretty men rather than sloppy men, but Gallahan did exactly that. He was tall and skinny, so he had a good looking in his clothes, and above all, his gentle smile that he occasionally made was worth a favor to everyone. For example, among female employees at the top of Duroc, Gallahan's popularity was skyrocketing. However, that was not the reason Duroc's owner is seeing Gallahan's attention right now. Duroc's top lord, who was coughing loudly, dulled his dry mouth for no reason. You'll find out thoroughly what new project Gallahan Lombardy is planning. It was a new order from the Empress. The Empress Palace, which he visited for greetings, was really an atmosphere where a cold breeze was blowing. He doesn't know why, but he only guessed it might be related to Gallahan. So why did you go outside the eyes of the Empress' attention? He is familiar with the fear of the Empress, kicked his tongue inward toward Gallahan. Rabini Anginas was a persistent woman who couldn't choose any means or methods to get what she wanted. He felt a bit of remorse, but he opened his mouth, justifying that he couldn't help it for his own survival. Gallahan, you. Yes. Gallahan, who had been eagerly looking at the sales status of the Koroi cotton textiles this week, raised his head at the call of the owner. The personal business that you're thinking about, are you not going to tell me? The owner said with a nice smile and deliberately more friendly. Ah. I'm still thinking about what to do with the plan. I'm just thinking about how to implement it. At Gallahan's words that he was in trouble, the face of the top lord was even wider. He has found a chance to dig in. Since then, I have a much richer experience in life than you do, so let me know. Do you know if I know a good way? The words made it plausible, but in fact, it wasn't like words. What kind of businessman is going to share his ideas with others? Although he was a person of Anginas and was incompetent, Gallahan, who thought that he was a good person, who gave up Duroc, blinked in confusion. No matter how much he doing the top job for the first time, he can't be aware of that much morality. But what is the reason for the sudden confiscation of the face? Gallahan coughed without deliberately hiding what was inconvenient. He didn't even have to think long. The Empress's eyes were still vivid as she looked coldly at himself at the dinner table. I don't know if you were trying to find the information you could find from the Duroc company or if you tried to put a spoon on it like the Koroi cotton textile business. Gallahan said, shrugging her shoulders. Well, I don't think it's time to talk to anyone yet. Well, but... It was Gallahan who also felt a little funny. It was obvious that the Empress had something to do, but, sadly, the Duroc owner wasn't a good person at thinking about people's intentions. Even now, when Gallahan refused, he was almost crying. It was proof that there were no good talents besides the Empress. Gallahan added a word with that smile, who thought he was kind. But one thing is certain, if it succeeds, it will be a business that will overturn everything in the empire. Perhaps the Empress who heard this news will be sweeter. Gallahan laughed more kindly as it seemed to repay a little for making Tia scared that day. 3 From the residence of Shaunanet and the twins, I headed straight to Claravan. Fortunately, Claravan, sitting in his office, opened the door to me while being a little puzzled. What are you doing here? I have one question. To see my face, Claravan raised his eyebrows as he moved the papers that were forming the tower on the desk aside. It seemed that he was curious. How do I go to the Imperial Academy, sir? Academy. Is this the Imperial Academy? Claravan looked confused. He asked while taking off the rimless glasses that Claravan was wearing for a while. Do you want to go to the academy? Then he even frowned. Imperial Academy is a 6-year system, and once you enter it, you can't come out except for a 1-year vacation, a closed. No. Not me. The threat, pretending to be advice, spoke quickly before continuing. Because other than me, someone wanted to go to the Imperial Academy. Aha! Suddenly, Claravan's sharp momentum softens. Claravan, who leaned against the back of the chair in a more comfortable look, asked with only curiosity left. My lady asks me how to get into the academy instead. Who is it? I wanted to talk about my personal life, but I replied because I couldn't hide the situation where I was asking Claravan about things. It's Estera. He wants to go to the academy and study medicine properly. You're talking about Dr. Estera O'Malley's youngest disciple. Claravan, who seemed to be knocking on a calculator in his head, nodded. If she is, she will probably be able to enter. Probably, if I tell the Lord, the enrollment fee and tuition will be easily solved. The only thing left is the entrance exam, but I'm afraid to see a very basic literacy. Estera is not a student, but a researcher. She has to go in. At my resolute words, Claravan tilted his head. Oops, I spoke too hard without knowing. I groaned quickly. So Estera said she wanted to do that. Claravan, who looked at me with suspicious eyes for a moment, said. If she wants to be a researcher rather than a new student, the story is a little different. The requirements are much more demanding. Well. It couldn't be easy because it's the Imperial Academy. Besides, Estera is not an academy graduate. I swallowed gulp and sharpened my ears. Once a research student needs a lot more money than a student, it's because he or she has to pay most of the money that goes into doing personal research. And what? And she needs a letter of recommendation. A letter of recommendation. He said it was money somehow, but the letter of recommendation was not something I could write. Whose recommendation do I need? I do not know. First of all, the recommendation from Dr. O'Malley, who has been teaching Estera, is the easiest to get. I nodded, recalling the face of Dr. O'Malley, who didn't seem to be so picky. Dr. O'Malley is the most well-known as Lombardy's primary physician, so if Estera receives a recommendation and submits an application for admission as a Lombardy scholar, Academy will give permission immediately. After all, Lombardy is the best. There was no place where the influence could not reach. Claravan continued to explain to me, thinking that he should protect this family no matter what. In fact, the best thing is the recommendation of my Lord O'Brachel, who once served as the vice president of the academy, but it will be difficult because they are both very careful about writing recommendations. This is Dr. O'Malley, who has taught Estera directly. He knows best how smart and passionate she is for herbal medicine, so getting a letter of recommendation won't be difficult. I thought so. Thank you for letting me know. I will then go to deliver this news to Estera, sir. I nodded to my belly button and left Claravan's office. You need to hurry. When I arrived at Dr. O'Malley's laboratory, I immediately understood the meaning of Claravan's smile, who had laughed ominously for some reason. Thank you, sir. Haha. Please go and work hard. What is this? Standing at the door, I hardened. A greasy man, as if oiled from head to toe, was greeting Dr. O'Malley with a fierce smile. Hair oil maybe, yes. I will go ahead and study hard so as not to harm my teacher's reputation. Plus in the back of the friendly looks, Estera was looking at the two people, smile a bitter smile. In my ears, who was still grasping the situation, the voice of a man shouting came into my ears. Thank you so much for writing the letter of recommendation. Chapter 28. You are listening at novelfull.audio. No. The doorknob in my hand rattled. Miss Florentia. Dr. O'Malley asked me, wondering when he saw me standing still holding the doorknob. Are there any uncomfortable places? Not uncomfortable then. Right now, I feel like flying by karate techniques, hearing that the recommendation you should give Esther is given to someone else. I wanted to grab Dr. O'Malley's fat and squeeze it, but I asked innocently, raising my mouth hard. What good is there? At my question, a gleaming man who was excited by Dr. O'Malley quickly approached and said hello. Hello, my lady. I'm Jason. This time, I was invited by Dr. O'Malley to go to the Imperial Academy. There was no place to be flawed except for the burden of being polite to greet, but it was a feeling of unfavorableness. First of all, I don't like it just by intercepting the letter of recommendation that Esther should receive. Well. Are you a student of Dr.? It's the first time I saw you. I've been in and out of the lab a few times so far, and it's the first time I've seen it. Jason is a student I taught for a while a few years ago. A few years ago? Not even now. I wrote a letter of recommendation because he wanted to go to the Imperial Academy this time. Heh. Thank you very much. Dr. O'Malley's letter of recommendation. I'm sure I'll get a lot of attention from the Academy Research Lab. Jason couldn't hide his laughter, he was happy just by imagining it. In comparison, Esther's face was dark. Although she was forced to laugh, I could see that it was quite gloomy. Stir then, now. Jason glanced at me and took luck with Dr. O'Malley. Miss Florentia, aren't you feeling uncomfortable? Apparently, Dr. O'Malley and Jason seemed to have separate places to go. Perhaps it was in return for writing a letter of recommendation. I nodded with a shaky face. I'm here to see Esther. Don't worry and go. Yes, then see you again next time. Dr. O'Malley leaves the lab with Jason, who is still grinning. In the quiet space, Esther was working hard again. Remove the teacups left on the table and arrange the refreshment bowls. I approached Esther carefully and said. Esther, are you okay? Esther laughed faintly at my question. Yes, my lady. It's okay, I am. I'm rather sorry to you. Are you sorry for me? I didn't understand what Esther said. I'm sorry, I have something to do. Even though the letter was taken away by a man named Jason, if you talk to Dr. O'Malley, he will definitely write a recommendation to Esther. However, Esther's bitter smile only got deeper. Something was weird. It's not going to be this depressing. Esther. Recommendation letter. Esther, who had been shutting her mouth for a while, difficultly opened her mouth. Only one recommendation letter for the Academy is valid per year, my lady. Ha, one piece. Yeah. Only then did Esther laugh as if consoling, toward me, who understood the situation and was stupid. Next year, you will write it to me. As I looked at it laughing but not laughing, I felt the responsibility. It was because of my work. I told her I would send her to the Imperial Academy and didn't pay attention to it. Dr. O'Malley's letter of recommendation was missed because the application deadline was approaching. I said, looking at Esther's drooping shoulders. Don't worry too much, Esther. I'll send you to the Academy at whatever cost. If I didn't receive Dr. O'Malley's recommendation, I could stop by getting someone else's recommendation. Well. It was breakfast with my father after a long time. I was chewing the fruit and planted for future work, and I turned my head to the sigh of my father who had already burst out for the third time. There was a deep wrinkle in my father's beauty, who always smiled like sunshine when he was with me. Dad, why is that? When I asked as I pulled my sleeves, my father looked at me with full consciousness. It's nothing. I was thinking a little bit. I think it was a worry rather than an idea. If you have a hard time, it's good to talk to someone else. At my words, my father stroked my head as if he was amazed. I've been worrying even for Tia. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal, so let's get rid of the ground. I kept shooting my shit at my father. My father sighed and smiled as he looked at his little daughter, who knew nothing, wanting to tell him anything. I'm just trying to do another job like last time in the textile business. Because I have no experience, I'm hesitant. Business. Come to think of it, my father said that at the Empress's dinner. Sooner or later, I'm thinking of getting my hands off the Koroi cotton fabric and doing some other personal business. Honestly, at that time, I thought my father was in front of the Empress and put a fire in front of her. It seemed to be sincere. Besides, I'm so deeply worried about it. I wanted to help if there was anything I could do to help. Dad, it's great. But what is it? Can't you explain it to me too? I sat a little closer to my father and said. I'm very, very curious. My father, who is also weak to me, pondered for a moment and then began to explain his business idea in simple words that a child could understand. To be honest, the explanation was long and complicated. My father himself wasn't exactly confused, but it was long and confused in the middle. However, as I listened to my father's explanation, I shouted, "Jackpot!" I felt his face glowing red with joy and excitement. My father's business plan was a new concept that wasn't there yet. However, it was very familiar to me. If this business is in place, my dad will have tremendous success on this alone. No, I could have been convinced that the commerce itself of the empire would develop into a completely different from before. Dad, it's the best. I shouted, hugging my father's waist tightly. As if I didn't think he would have understood everything I just explained, my father smiled and hugged my face to face. Dad is strengthened, Tia likes it this way. However, it was my father who did not understand all of the repercussions this business would bring. Because this was great. And a person who could make a fantastic combination with my father flashed in my head. Daddy. Why is that so, Tia? If you have any questions, ask Mr. Claravan. Claravan.neen. Yeah. My father, too, knows that he has worked quite closely with Claravan while doing the Koroi cotton business. How crisp Claravan is at the top. He is the same age as my father, he has strangely much knowledge of the upper part compared to the relatively young age. But for some reason, my father seemed unwilling. Claravan.nim, To my father's ambiguous reaction, I cried out because he was so sweet. If I ask for something I don't know, Mr. Claravan will always kindly teach me. The first impression may be a little cold, but it doesn't hurt. Yeah. Just think about it. My father was compelled to answer my torch, but he seemed reluctant. I think someone is afraid of Claravan. *******. I read my dad's work, and I was walking inside the mansion to go to my business. Grandpa's schedule does not change unless there is anything special. The schedule, repeated weekly for decades, remained the same until I helped my grandfather's work. So, this morning, the second day of the week, is a day when he goes to work alone without meetings. It meant that it was a relatively leisurely schedule. I was heading to the office with a relatively light heart. Until I heard very annoying laughter down the stairs. Haha. Estra, you want to go to the academy? I stopped and looked down the stairs. It was a guy named Estra and Jason who seemed a little angry. Estra. Do you have any idea what the Imperial Academy is like? Of course, I know it's a hard place to go, senior. But I'm sure someday. It's late this year, but someday. Wait. You don't think you can't go because I got a recommendation from Dr. O'Malley, to a guy named Jason, who behaved so politely in front of me, and his attitude toward Estra was completely different. Yes, I thought it was all pretending. I sat down on the stairs and listened more to the conversation between the two. Do you know what my family is doing? Jason asked Estra. However, before Estra responds, she shrugs and answers. It's a plan company, a company that specializes in medicine. Oh, I said that the greasy face looks familiar somewhere. The image that first urged Astalio and brought it into the gambling game was the second of the plan's superiors. Astalio, who is much younger, tried to follow him as an older brother. Later, because Astalio owed gambling debt, Lombardy's property was handed over to the top of plan. My patience was reversed because I tried to take real estate that had been sold at a low price in exchange for Astalio's debt. When I think about that time, my anger rises again. In the Imperial Academy, the impact that I build up will serve as wings for me in the future. But do you dare go beyond my recommendation? Jason laughed at Estra with his head bowed up and down as if it wasn't worth it. Know your place, Estra. At that moment, the words filled with ridicule seemed to get stuck in my heart. You don't know your place until the end. What on earth is that place? I couldn't say anything to Jason, and it was as if my past was reflected in Estra's standing still. The days when I was always ignored by them, they told me, always know your place, feeling that they have a higher position than anyone in the family, popped into my mind like it just happened yesterday, and it made me angry. What the hell did Estra do wrong? She just said, I want to go to the academy. Should she listen to such humiliation like that? I got up from the stairs where I was sitting. Then I stepped forward to the office. Originally, I was planning to ask my grandfather to get a letter of recommendation for Estra. And I didn't even worry too much because I could cover the insufficient research funds from my pocket money. However, the plan has changed. Jason Flange's recommendation from Dr. O'Malley. You're going to get a lot of attention at the academy. Just when I thought that a man who seemed to have spilled all the oil on his head would use the name Lombardy in front of people and shudder, it seems like it will flip over again. I have to change the strategy. I clenched my fists and turned to the office again. Chapter 29. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lombardy's office in the mansion. Heavy air that seemed to be unable to breathe was filling the interior of the office like a crush. It was a feeling of desolation that the culprit would want to turn back and run out again as soon as he stepped into this place. It was Lulac Lombardy, sitting at the desk in the mansion offices, creating such a terrifying atmosphere. Lulac, who was nicknamed the Lion of Lombardy when he was younger, grew deeper and heavier as he got older. Now, he was angry like a thunderbolt, but when he was deeply troubled like today, the overbearing appearance reappeared. Lulac was looking at the statue of Natalia, his wife, on the window. It was a bust given by her granddaughter, Florentia, as a present. He always enjoyed it with longing and affection for his wife, but it was a little different nowadays. Natalia. Lulac gave the deceased wife a low name. We should have been a bit more strict parents. Vise was the first son of both couples. On top of that, there was Jeanette, the eldest daughter, but since childhood, she was a child who couldn't reach his hands. For this reason, Vise, who has a child-like accident and a naughty side, took the couple's affection, especially Natalia's attention. And that was the problem. It was too late when he realized that something was wrong with Vise's growing figure. The Lambrou Empire was mostly a society of thorough first-born succession. Vise recognized it at a very early age. However, from generation to generation, Lombardy was a family that gave priority to the individual's abilities over the firstborn and succeeded to the main office. Point 1. As Lulac got older and his children grew older, his worries deepened. If he had the right children, he wanted him to take over the Lord's job and take a break from tomorrow, but there was no right person. Not long ago, he showed this feeling to her eldest daughter, Jeanette, but her daughter's answer was cold. I've seen how many things my father carries on his back, the longest I've seen among the brothers. And I don't intend to live that kind of life. Father. Lulac was forced to laugh bitterly and nod his head. No matter how much is given, if you don't want it, it becomes a terrible chair with thorns. Not too long ago, Vise made another big mistake. Vise, who is in charge of managing Lombardy, owned real estate in the central region of the empire, sold the land to a nobleman close to him at an excessively low price. The problem was that the land had been told that iron ore had been buried steadily. knowing that V's sold the land for his external influence. Fortunately, from the beginning, it was considered a small mine, so the financial damage was not so great. However, it was only this time that Lulac knew for sure that V's can forsake Lombardy's interests for his own personal gain. Point 2. When the thoughts reached that point, it was time to finally see a big sigh out of Lulac's mouth. Thud. The sound of a small knock tickled his ears. "Who are you?" Lulac asked at an unfamiliar knock. "Grandfather. This is Tia." "Tia." A cheerful, loud voice replied outside the door. Surprised, Lulac got up from his seat and opened the door directly. "Grandpa." Florentia, whose face looked like a flower on both cheeks, smiled wide as she looked at Lulac. "Hey, our Tia is here." And at the same time, the heavy air that was squeezing the office and Lulac flew away in no time. He hugged the little granddaughter who ran in and hugged his leg, laughing at Lulac. "Caw." A smile on Lulac's face continued at the sound of Florentia's laughter. It was hard to think he is the same person who had been serious a while ago. "Are you busy with your jobs, grandfather?" Florentia asked. "I am not very busy." "Why is it happening?" To Lulac's question, Florentia energetically replied. "Please write a letter of recommendation, Grandpa." "Letter of recommendation?" "Yeah." Lulac tilted his head for a moment, then put Florentia down on the sofa. When Gallahan and her granddaughter visited the office together, Florentia always had the place to sit. After a while, cookies and juice were placed on the table. Looking at it for a moment, Florentia quickly bites into a large cookie. It was too casual for coming to receive a letter of recommendation from Lord. It's an 8-year-old child, to know what. Lulac bruised at himself and smiled at his granddaughter. "Is it delicious?" "Yes." "It's sweet." Lulac stroked Florentia's head in an unspoiled appearance. "Yes, write a letter of recommendation." Probably, it seemed that she didn't know well, but it wasn't a simple thing to come and ask for a letter of recommendation from the Lord. Receiving a letter of recommendation stamped with the seal of Lord, in a word, meant receiving full support from Lombardy. It also said that if anything happened to him, Lombardy would intervene. "It couldn't be yours, who was it for? O.org, it's Estra. She is a student of Dr. O'Malley, and she says she wants to go to the Imperial Academy to do research. Herbology. Then she should get a recommendation from Dr. O'Malley. Dr. O'Malley has already given a recommendation letter to another person. Probably, Florentia was looking for the grandfather who would do this purely because he wanted to help the child. Lulac seemed to be warming up once again. However, the letter of recommendation from the Lord is still. What was left now was how to burn well without hurting the granddaughter's heart. But Florentia. This grandfather's letter of recommendation is not so easy to give out. Florentia sat still listening with her big eyes open. Lulac was already sweating in his head thinking about what to do if his granddaughter started crying. 6. The tail of his smiling mouth was about to tremble a couple of times. An unusually weak personality to blood and flesh was also manifested here. Yeah. Broschel's recommendation would be better than this grandfather's recommendation. Broschel was a scholar who served as the vice president of the academy, and after retirement, he was a scholar who entered the Lombardy family, who had been providing support. So, it wasn't as much as a recommendation from Lord, but it would be a great help. If you send that child named Esther to Broschel and get an appropriate evaluation. I need both. One. Lulac stopped talking. Speaking of 2 sheets, grandfather's recommendation and Broschel's recommendation, 2 of them. Lulac was embarrassed and was looking for something to say for a moment. Florentia asked Lulac like that. "You said you need a reasonable evaluation, didn't you?" "Yes, I did." "What if I want to get both of your letters of recommendation?" Florentia seemed to be sincere. "Because Estra is really smart and makes everything well." "She makes it well?" Lulac asked, seemingly curious. Yeah. Knowing well about medicine and applying that knowledge to developing and creating were different stories. Many scholars knew how to do the former, but the latter was rare. Then, I'll bring the medicine made by Estra. Florentia asked, putting down the cookie he was holding in his hand. It would be difficult to make me and Broschel satisfy at the same time. Estra can do it. You seem to have a lot of confidence. Lulak laughed at her young granddaughter. Yes. So, if you like the medicines made by Estra, are you writing a letter of recommendation, Grandpa? At Florentia's words, Lulak laughed and nodded the head. Yes, let's do it. I'll tell Broschel in advance. Wow. Grandpa, the best. Florentia was very happy and ran away and hugging Lulak. Lulak melted in the funny act he had never received from other grandchildren who were always afraid of him. Yes, yes. He didn't know, Lulak who was patting the child's small back and shed a bleak laugh. The fact that the granddaughter, who seems to be hugging with her face buried in his grandfather's lap, is actually rolling her head fiercely with her eyes shining. 1 *****. The West Building is where the offices and conference rooms of people working for Lombardy are gathered. A person who was not often seen here was walking around the first floor of the West Building. That person. Isn't he Gallahan? But why is he so restless here? Each of the people who reported to their superiors looked back at Gallahan and was confused. Who? The corridor, where Gallahan sighed, was in front of Claravan's office. The door with the name Claravan Pellets in gold foil looked so big. It's a good idea to listen to your daughter. He came here because he wanted to, but Gallahan hesitated. It was because Claravan was scared. Shall I just go back? It was true that during the Koroi cotton business, Claravan's help was very much appreciated. However, it was a separate question, whether it was scary or not in Claravan's sharp eyes. Gallahan's shoulders drooped down. He was very pathetic. Even before Florentia told him, he had thought about getting Claravan's help. But after all, he just closed his mind because it was awkward to talk to Claravan. 4 But my daughter was right. Of course, if there is anything you don't know, you should ask. In particular, it was correct to receive all the help that could be received by someone who was still not good at the business like himself. Taking a small deep breath, Gallahan, who hardened his mind, knocked on the door of the office. Knock. It was whispering once, but it was quite loud. However, no answer came from inside. Once again, knock. Gallahan knocked again, but there was still no answer inside. Oh, I guess he's not inside. Gallahan's face brightened strangely. Isn't it unavoidable because there are no people inside? It was when Gallahan turned to this light step, pledging to come back later, maybe not to keep it. Oh. Not too far away, Claravan stood. Looking at Gallahan with arms folded and leaning obliquely on the window. 2 Look, Claravan. I was wondering when you will knock. Claravan said in a cold voice. He was watching it all. Gallahan's face turned slightly red with embarrassment. 2 But it didn't take longer than I thought. Instead of answering, Gallahan smiled and scratched his head. You must have come because you have something to say. Claravan walked up and said. As he looked at it, Gallahan thought. Florentia clearly said, Mr. Claravan is always kind. Suddenly, he was worried about treating his daughter so coldly. Come in. First, Claravan, who took the lead, said as he opened the door of his office. Well, excuse me for a moment. Gallahan walked in, saying hello politely. It was a stiff movement that seemed to make a creaking sound because of tension. At that appearance, Claravan laughed without anyone knowing. Chapter 30 You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Gallahan and Claravan sat face to face. What surprise was that Claravan gave Gallahan a senior seat. It was awkward, but anyway, as Claravan pointed, Gallahan sat in a soft chair and spoke with a dry mouth. I know you'll be busy, but the reason I've been looking for this is to get advice. You don't have to come to me like this, and you should have called me to the top of Duroc. It's not about the Koroi cotton business. I'm here for advice on my personal business. Gallahan Lombardy's personal business. Gallahan felt quite interesting. The words of business with Gallahan, who always lived in the library of the mansion or the pleasure of reading books in his own library, did not match. In a way, the last Koroi cotton project was forcibly entrusted to Gallahan. But now you're trying to start a personal business. Claravan thought he might have to re-evaluate Gallahan. I don't know how much help I can be, but let's say it comfortably. Claravan said in an uncomfortable voice. To be honest, if it were someone else, he wouldn't have driven it out, saying that there wasn't much free time. But strangely, it was Claravan, who showed a weaker appearance to Florentia. 1 As if he didn't know that Gallahan would answer, Claravan would listen to the story so easily, his eyes were wide open. Seeing him hesitating for a moment in embarrassment, Claravan said calmly. I'm not saying that I'm going to hear the story because time is running out, Gallahan. Ah. Sin, I'm sorry. So my plan is, Gallahan, who had his throat trimmed, began to explain with a thoughtful voice. It was a little more sequential introduction than the explanation that he had always had with Florentia in the morning. But it's still verbose, and Gallahan had to talk about it for quite some time. When that long explanation was over, Gallahan had a sore throat. However, without even realizing his condition, he was nervous and busy watching Claravan's reaction. Claravan said nothing. Then Gallahan was terrified. Was it such a bad plan? Enough to lose something to say. As time passed, and in the end, when Gallahan squeezed his shoulders in disappointment, Claravan suddenly opened his mouth. It's amazing. Yes. Of course, there are complementary points. Of course, it is. What are the points? Gallahan asked hastily. But Claravan didn't give the right answer right away. There is one condition. What is? Please let me be with you in Gallahan's business. Gallahan blew his eyes. He wondered what he heard right now. I'll say it again, but Gallahan's business plan is big. Then, are you saying it's good? Yes. Honestly, it's amazing. Claravan admitted that he was underestimating a man named Gallahan Lombardy. But, with my advice, the project is a huge success and I would be very hungry if I couldn't participate, so if you accept my conditions, I'll tell you the perfect point. Gallahan smiled and suddenly became a serious expression. But Claravan. Don't you have an employment contract with Lombardy? This is my personal business, not Lombardy. Gallahan wanted an independent asset that wasn't tied to the name Lombardy. He wanted the power to protect Florentia from the storm that one day would settle for the next lord's house. No matter how desperately Claravan's help was, he couldn't rely on Lombardy's power again. Suddenly, however, a smile spread to Claravan's face. It was a very satisfying smile. Such prudence, even better. Then he said as if not to worry. The contract between me and Lombardy is a fixed-term employment contract, not a life contract. Also, don't worry, we have a clause stating that you can work as much as possible. It was a new contract made by moving to the position of the education center at the request of the Lord. In that case, it is something I would rather ask for. Let's do it together, Claravan. Gallahan was displeased and reached out one hand. Gallahan, who looked down at it for a moment, also reached out. After a brief handshake, Claravan said in a more relaxed voice. Once the details of profit distribution will be adjusted later, I will start with the supplementary measures. Gallahan nodded fervently at Claravan's words. It looked like he was watching Florentia in class, and Claravan laughed deeply. The mayor of this business should be the commoners, not the nobles. The commoners. It was the opposite direction from the plan that Gallahan had made. Yes. So, naturally, the location of the store should be Heslop Market, not Setakuna. Located on the other side of the Setakuna shopping street, the Heslet Market was a huge commercial district located in the center of the emperor's direct command. Unlike Setakuna, which is relatively quiet, it was always noisy and boasting a huge floating population with people gathered from all over the empire. And the meeting between the two continued for a while after that. If it hadn't been time for Claravan to go to the meeting, it might have been going on until sunset. Claravan asked as he stood up with a slightly exhausted face from the enthusiastic discussion, looking at Gallahan. "Are this the Lord? What are you talking about? The one who asked you to go get some advice." Plus Gallahan was already more than half convinced. It was said that Lulak had moved his back toward him to empower his youngest son, but Gallahan smiled and shook his head. "No, it was Florentia." "Yes. Actually, I haven't spoken to my father yet. I was afraid that he would be confused because I was delusional, and this is a very personal business. So, I was thinking alone," but Florentia said. "I could ask Mr. Claravan." Gallahan was cool, but he was sincerely grateful for Claravan. It's proof that Claravan.nim teaches very well our Florentia. "Thank you." He received a thank you from her parents, but Claravan couldn't laugh. It could have been simply that a child told the story of a teacher who seemed to know everything. Gallahan seemed to be thinking that way. However, for some reason, Claravan kept thinking of Florentia's deep eyes. And I kept hearing strong premonitions as if it wasn't a product of such a coincidence that Gallahan came to him. ******. I visited Dr. O'Malley's lab early in the morning as soon as my father went to work. Fortunately, it was early, so there was only Esther in the lab. She must have been in a bad mood after missing the recommendation letter in front of me and Jason's grumbling. As if nothing had happened today, she is constantly doing her job. I really wanted to help Esther. As I quietly opened the door and entered, Esther, who was diligently cleaning the desk in the lab, saw me and greeted me. "You are here, lady. Good morning, Esther. You look better today. I thought of a good way." "Is it a good way?" Esther opened her eyes round. "It's a good idea to get a letter of recommendation to Esther. Miss Florentia." Esther looked at me as if she was moved. "Esther, you know the book you showed me before? My grandmother's recipe notebook." "Yes, that. Can you show me again?" As I went in and out for wrist treatment, I asked Esther a lot of questions. The first was to get acquainted, and the second was to find out as much as possible about her. One of the things I learned about that was about Esther's grandmother. Although it was in a small rural village, it seemed that he helped people with a remedy that was passed down from generation to generation using a variety of medicinal herbs available in the vicinity where there were no clinics. And because of the influence, Esther said that she had been exposed to medicinal herbs from the beginning, and she thought she wanted to help people who are sick. Of course. Please wait. Esther brought a notebook from her desk in the corner of the lab. It was an old notebook with stains on the cover. I took it and flipped the page halfway through. "Can you explain a little bit more about this drug?" Esther looked at the part one was pointing to and said. "It's the medicine that my grandmother made and told me to bring it to people who sprained their ankles or hurt their shoulders while working in the village." Esther laughing as if she missed her grandmother, she read her grandmother's handwriting. "It is a medicine that has been passed down from mouth to mouth in our family for a long time, so it is not written in official books. It's a medicine that relieves swelling and reduces pain to some extent." "How did you use this? Isn't it medicine to eat?" "No. I use this medicine by moistening it with a cloth and placing it on the sore spot." I read it as if passing by, but my memory was correct. I added a few important questions that weren't written down. "Can this medicine be used for a long time?" "Yes. When I work, there is always a place where everyone gets sick. Some people use it every night for several months." "What is the smell? Doesn't it smell bad?" "No. It's a rather sweet smell. The main ingredient is dried tree nuts. It is perfect. But I tried to hide my excitement and said calmly. Let's change this a little bit. Can we make it thick like the last Melkin medicine? Esther nodded right away at my words. She didn't even ask where I was going to use it. Yes, young lady. Their eyes were full of trust for me. I smiled at Esther. If this goes as planned, I can safely send Esther to the Imperial Academy. Ah, and are there any herbs that feel cool when you eat or apply them to your body? If it's cool, there's a tea leaf called Hipsey. Ah, Hipsey. I've had it before. Drinking like mint leaves made my mouth feel upset. Prepare it as a separate concentrate. Why is Hipsey? Original food also smells better to make it taste better. Medicine will also do. It's important to make it feel like something works. Ah, as expected, Esther now even looked at me with respect. I shrugged as if this wasn't a big deal. I'll ask you to get the beeswax and oil and send it here. I'm going to mix 2 concentrates there. A medicine that relieves swelling and has a slightly soothing effect, tea leaves that feel cool like mint, and beeswax. I laughed when I remembered the medicine that would be born by combining them. Ointment with a picture of a tiger. 1 It is trying to reproduce what was once called a national ointment and used as a panacea for arthritis, headache, and stuffy nose. And I will send Esther to the academy with it. With 2 shining letters of recommendation. There is no way that elderly people like Grandpa and Broschel can resist the temptation of this ointment. If this drug is successfully completed, there is only one thing left to worry about. The question of whether Grandpa's sore knee was on the left or the right.